Technology Truths, brought to you by Geico.
Technology Truths.
Truth. Teenagers can communicate entirely in emojis.
How was the birthday party? Pizza slice, kitten, soccer ball, pineapple?
Truth. It's so easy to switch and save on car insurance at geico.com.
What are you talking about? Paperclip, shoulder shrug, high five, wizard hat? What?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. Technology Truths, brought to you by Geico.
Technology Truths.
Truth. Teenagers can communicate entirely in emojis.
How was the birthday party? Pizza slice, kitten, soccer ball, pineapple?
Truth. It's so easy to switch and save on car insurance at geico.com.
What are you talking about? Paperclip, shoulder shrug, high five, wizard hat? What?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Did you grow up with a NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek.
Let's consider the secret life of the innermost nesting doll. Living most of her life in the dark, inside the other nesting dolls, she has plenty of time to think, if she could. Sadly, she has no brain. However, when an innermost nesting doll hears that Geico not only saves people money, but also has been providing great service for over 75 years, she thinks it's obvious you should switch. Because yes, switching to Geico is a no-brainer. Pity the innermost nesting doll and her lot in life.
Hey everyone, it's time again for another TurdOrTreasure. We round up the reviews that we haven't been able to get to in the main show, and we're taking a week off of the main TWIG program simply because we were sort of all caught up in the WrestleMania weekend and covering everything there, and it was a little much. Like, we're talking, it was like 8 hours a day or so of following wrestling just to keep up. So, you know, with that in mind, we all sort of scattered to the winds to relax and recuperate, and we decided we're going to come back next week with the main show. So I'm flying solo, so we discussed it and said, hey, why don't we just do a TurdOrTreasure in its place instead? Because we've got a bunch of reviews that we covered and have had sort of in the can waiting to get released, and it was a matter of, you know, when are we going to find time to put it? So we're going to put it all rapid fire in here. And then we'll be back. I believe Birdman's going to be on Mayhem Mike's this week. There's also going to be an episode of Nerd to the Third Power. And then this following weekend, we should be having, I believe, depending on timing-wise, we'll probably have a prototype come out. And then the main show as well. So what do I have for you? And actually, well, let's start with what have I been up to? Other than WrestleMania, it's been basically covering a lot of the stuff that I had in my backlog because I was sick and lost my voice. So I went and basically watched a bunch of things, played a bunch of things, and then waited until I was able to actually record. And I'm still sort of recovering in that I'm not coughing anymore, but I have, my voice register is a little down because it's a little hoarse still. So I've also been, on the side preparing some stuff. My brother's getting married in a couple weeks, and I wanted to go through some old home videos and basically back them up because they were on like Video 8, High 8, and I think I have some mini DV tapes from different camcorders, and I got a capture card for my computer that upscales to 1080p, which again isn't going to make it look better, but it is going to make it a little easier to work with. And I then had to find somebody I could borrow a camera from. Luckily his fiance's father had a camera that would work with the Video 8 and the High 8 tapes. So I was able to go through, found out some of our home videos that unfortunately have been erased or due to storage conditions, or like maybe magnets got near them. But some of them did survive, like some stuff that might be a little embarrassing, but that's the whole point, is to put together a bunch of videos for them that will show basically our home videos from childhood. The rest, I believe, are on VHS, and my mom says she has them somewhere. So now I got to borrow her VHS machine because, yes, she's in her 60s, so she has a VHS machine, and then hook it up into the computer and digitize them, because we're getting to a point where it's getting harder and harder to get working equipment, and things are starting to break down, where now I can basically capture it, do some color correction, audio correction, and then burn a copy to a Blu-ray that you can just hold on to, and then also keep a copy in the cloud somewhere, so that you don't ever end up losing it. There's still a physical copy, and then there's still a digital copy that we can grab whenever we want. So that's kind of cool. So that's sort of been time consuming, because most of those tapes, the analog ones, the mini DV's a little easier because you plug that in using FireWire, which I had to get a $10 FireWire card port, plug into my computer for. They can at least copy it a little bit faster than real time. And the analog tapes, though, you have to be recording and watching the whole time, because there's gaps between them, and then you have to leave a 90-minute tape recording, and that ends up being like 70 gigs once it captures it, and then you got to pare it down. So I've been doing sort of that on the side as well as the review stuff. So that's pretty much what my time has been like, and I'm hopefully now over all this sickness crap, because the weather's starting to finally get a little better, and things are looking up. So what do we have on this week's show? I'll go over some of the reviews here. We've got I've got a couple games from Sega's Sega Ages line for the Nintendo Switch, which is Alex Kidd, and the Game Ground, which is the new two that just got released. I have Aniara, which is a Swedish sci-fi film that I got a advanced copy to watch, and then I also have Blaster Master Zero 2, that is the sequel, on the Switch. We've got Malibu Express and Hard Ticket to Hawaii, which have been released on Blu-ray. They've been remastered in 4K. We've got Neo Atlas 1469, which is a interesting game. We've got One Piece World Seeker from Namco Bandai. Our World Is Ended. Mr. Tristifer has Unit 4, a game he reviewed. We have The Princess Guide. Votoms, armored trooper Votoms. And we've got Zanki Zero, and I think I got a couple other things in here, but the main thing we're going to start the show off with is we were going to put out with the main show, we got a cookbook from Inside Editions on the WWE, which is recipes inspired by different superstars from that. And the first one we wanted to do, so we wanted to get it out at least today, because WrestleMania being yesterday, we wanted to get out the Coffee Kingston, and that's the first one. And it's sort of it's a Satan's Pantry / review that we would have had in the main show, but we're going to have it out this week, and then we're going to have more in the next coming weeks to sort of fill out, give you an idea of what's in the book. And I know that Birdman really wanted to get that in here, so we're going to put that in here first. So it's going to be a weird thing. You're going to hear a Satan's Pantry and then the rest of the reviews, and then I'm going to come back at the end just to sort of close out and say what's up and see what we're going to do next.
It's a new day. Yes, it is.
Oh my God!
But WCW Zone World Heavyweight Champion Hulk Hogan, he's got Pasta Mania.
Do you smell what The Rock is cooking?
Give the people what they want.
Welcome out to Satan's Pantry here on TWIG, your flagship of stupidity. And of course, as you know, we take a look down the Devil's Grocery aisle. But more recently on the show, we've been taking a look at Inside Edition's variety of different cookbooks they have. There's been the TMNT, Fallout, the Elder Scrolls, the official cookbook, the Taste of Tamriel, and most recently, we're going to be looking at the official cookbook for the WWE by Allison, and I'm going to butcher your last name, Robicelli, photography by John Dean. Today's inaugural thing comes at a rather prodigious time, you might say. I'm pretty sure I screwed up that word too. But we are doing this on WrestleMania Sunday. That's right. But I'm not alone as I try the tastes of the squared circle. I am joined with
Mr. Tristifer.
Woo! And in honor of one of the matches on the card this evening, we are going to be trying Kofi Kingston's signature drink, Coffee Kingston. I'm going to read you what the flavor text says. This 1-2 punch of coffee and Jamaican rum will have you flying like a magical unicorn. Looking forward to that. The ingredients are 1 tablespoon of instant espresso powder. You got espresso powder? I'm looking at my wife.
Espresso, isn't it?
Shut up. Sugar, whole milk, Jamaican rum, 1 cup of ice, and whipped cream for serving. If you're following my Instagram and the TWIG official one, which I think is TWIG_official podcast, I think.
TWIG_official_podcast. As you hear at the end of every episode of This Week in Geek.
Yeah, exactly, because he's my imaging guy and he knows what the hell he's talking about. You combine the ingredients except the whipped cream in a blender, blend until smooth, pour in the fancy glasses that we have today. Tristan was saying before we started this, it doesn't smell like anything.
Yeah, pretty much it has whipped cream on top, so it just kind of smells like whipped cream a little bit on top.
So without any further ado, we're going to try us some Coffee Kingston. Well, that's good. You really taste the whipped cream. As Tristan dies.
There's the Jamaican rum.
Yep. Oh man. That's a nice dark, strong flavor, but it goes well with the coffee.
Yeah, it's pretty punchy.
Oh my god, this would be awesome to wake up to in the morning if you're an alcoholic.
That's the key part. You need to be an alcoholic to really enjoy this beverage first thing in the morning.
Oh my god, I would so drink this in the morning. This is beautiful.
As a facial hair wearing person, the whipped cream is a double-edged sword. Tastes great, but man, does it linger.
Man, it mixes so, the rum and the coffee is such a nice complementary flavor to each other, because you really taste the bitterness yet sweetness of the coffee, and the rum has this dark undertone to it. It's friggin' fantastic. This is really good.
It almost reminds me of eating dark chocolate that's like really dark, like 90% cocoa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got that, man, I love that dark chocolate flavor to this. My God. I'm in love. Holy shit.
I've decided to kind of give up on the facial hair thing. I'm just going to let the whipped cream do its thing.
My wife tells me there are leftovers. That's my glass hitting the table. My God, I want more. It's WrestleMania Sunday. I'm going to have more.
Wow. Just ate a whole bunch of whipped cream at once. That was a different flavor I didn't expect, but it's always good. It's whipped cream. Can't go wrong. So
far on the WWE Cookbook's rating, this is a success. A resounding success. Coming up on the show over the next few weeks, we'll be taking a look at a few more post-WrestleMania different additions to this. We're going to be doing Ric Flair's Woo Pies. We're going to be looking at John Cena's Cereal Treats, and maybe Nacho Man Randy Savage as we conclude this. And then, of course, we'll be back to our regular Satan's Pantry programming, but we're also looking forward to other cookbooks from Inside Editions, I think, such as The Godfather, the Corleone Family Cookbook, I think is coming up rather soon, and some other stuff. So keep it locked here to ThisWeekInGeek.net for more Satan's Pantry as we decide to enter the tastier side of the commentating table here on TWIG, the flagship of stupidity. Tasty.
You know what? You just made the list.
Oh, no. Oh, here we go.
We all can see you. How the hell you think we can miss? You come out here with your bright-ass purple shirt, and before that, your bright green shirt. Before that, your bright orange shirt. You run around here looking like a big fat bowl of Fruity Pebbles.
You can kiss my
It's me, Austin!
Oh, son of a bitch!
What? It's me, Austin! It was me all along, Austin!
Alex Kidd and Miracle World and Game Ground are the newest releases that Sega has put out in that new Sega Ages line they've been putting on the Nintendo Switch. We've had the opportunity to review pretty much everything else they've released so far in the past, with the best standout being the Phantasy Star release, and that still stands now. That seems to be the most in-depth and I would say most complete release. But for those of you that either owned a Master System or wanted to know what was the mascot before Sonic took over, it was Alex Kidd, and they were fun, interesting 8-bit adventures that in this case had like rock, paper, scissors to fight bosses and a bunch of weird, wacky Japanese, elements to them. And it's ported over and translates quite well to the system. It's a quick and easy thing to pick up and play for, fairly cheap. As far as Game Ground goes, I had not played it before, but I had heard of it, and it's sort of I'm trying to think, like a bit like Gauntlet, a bit like what was that one, Knight's Quest or Knight's Sword, something or other. There was a game like that from Square Enix, where basically you are vertically scrolling, and you're sort of shooting at enemies, and it's an arcade game where you're trying to dodge things and keep, basically gaining ground on the enemy. So they're both straightforward games. They both play quite well. I didn't encounter any graphical glitches like I had on the Outrun game, or anything like the shooters where I had games crash on me where I was sort of stuck in a loop. Those have been patched out, actually, I've noticed. Didn't encounter any issues with it. Fun, straightforward. If I were to recommend, I'd recommend both of them, honestly, but the Alex Kidd game is probably the better of the two. I do like that they are releasing, a wide variety of games, in that it's not just stuff from the Genesis. You're getting stuff from the arcade, within Game Ground. You're getting stuff from the Master System. And I saw that they had a press release that they're going to be releasing stuff from other systems too. My fingers are crossed, and I kind of hope, I get an email from a Sega rep saying, hey, Panzer Dragoon Saga's coming, or something like, because I'm a big RPG fan, something like a Skies of Arcadia, or, we're going to release the other Phantasy Star games, and by the way, we're going to put out those PS2 versions of them, let you select the version that you want, like the ones we never got here, or something to that extent, because I would love to have the entire Phantasy Star series out there, or have them start releasing stuff like the other things in the Shining Force series, or something, or the sky's the limit now that they're releasing pretty much everything. So I'm fully on board with everything they've been releasing, and pretty much, with the exception of a couple glitches here and there in some of the earliest releases in this series, they've been pretty top notch, and M2's done a fantastic job of porting everything. So I would say buy both of them. If you can only afford one of them, which you can probably afford both because they're cheap, go with the Alex Kidd game, and I hope they release the rest in that series. Can't wait to see what they've got next. I'm pretty pumped for Sega right now. Aniara is a Swedish sci-fi, I guess, sort of space opera, almost, I guess, doom and gloomy, Solaris-y sort of inspired, interesting film that I had the opportunity to review a screener copy of, I would say pretty well in advance, over a month before it's coming out and premiering on iTunes here. And I've got to say, I've got mixed feelings about it. The basic premise of the movie is people are moving, on sort of these giant, I could say, space liners instead of an ocean liner. Think like a giant cruise ship that's the size of maybe a shopping mall or two stacked on top of each other. Like, we're talking giant, very, very, very large ship. And, they're going to live on Mars or wherever they're going to live. Like, we've sort of populated our solar system. And while they're traveling, this is a world of consumption. People are just happy to live in luxury and everything. A little tiny screw sort of comes in contact with the ship and ruptures their fuel line, and they go way off course. So, without going too much into what happens, they've got to figure out a way to basically live on the ship, and what are the psychological aspects of a long-term voyage instead of maybe the few days to couple week trip that they had originally planned. Now they're looking at potentially years. How do they make the food survive? How do they cope with it? How do you psychologically deal with, it's like being stuck adrift in the ocean, right? And nobody can come get you. You've got to sort of correct the course yourself. So it introduces a bunch of cool philosophical ideas, but the part where I'm a little mixed on is it's kind of slow, to be honest. I felt that it could have told its story a little faster. The action was good, but this is supposed to be a sort of a doom and gloomy kind of movie with a very introspective, thought-provoking, atmosphere, which is all fine and dandy. And I'm not saying this because, it's obviously in Swedish and it's got English subtitles. It's not a subtitling issue or anything that way, or a pacing. It just felt, a little on the long side for the story it wanted to tell. That doesn't take away from, it being an interesting movie, and it's definitely worth a watch. I don't think this is something I would recommend to most people except for hardcore sci-fi fans when it comes to purchasing it, let's say on iTunes. But it is worth a rental. I would say it's worth definitely watching, and then if you like it, then go ahead and purchase it, something permanent that way. It is something that I might go and rewatch again, because, I might have to let it settle and then, rewatch it, and it might become one of those things where, it's an instant classic. Not an instant classic, but something that becomes a classic in the long run. It has a very, I would say, like 2001 Space Odyssey, Solaris sort of feel, just in the atmosphere of it, just the feeling of the world and how it's presented to you. Not in, narrative or storytelling, just the feeling. It's kind of interesting that way. Cinematography is great. The acting is really good. And, it's got this really cool aesthetic of, it's almost like, what if we were already in space? So yes, it's very far in the future, and the ship looks futuristic from the outside, but then the inside, it looks like a cross-section of a shopping mall / town, which is kind of cool. And then there's, some futuristic things like, not like dream manipulation or thought manipulation, where you go into a room and you sort of see happy thoughts, and it sort of lets you relive your happy thoughts through an AI system, which is really cool. And there's a lot more things going on in the film that, again, I won't get into detail because I don't want to spoil anything. But those parts are handled very, very well. It's a very competently made movie. So, my thoughts on pacing notwithstanding, it is definitely worth watching. So, it's going to be out May 17th, and depending on when this review comes out, it might be closer to that, actually. And I would definitely say check it out as a rental for sure. Check out a trailer for it on YouTube or something for that extent, and give it a watch, especially if you're a big sci-fi fan, if you're, craving something a little different out there than your standard, sci-fi bug monster movie or something that makes you think a little more. So that's Aniara.
Basically, he was a geek, sir.
Leave me alone, geek boy.
Holy shit, you geeks are badass.
Malibu Express and Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Where do I begin? These are two of my favorite B-movies, and from a B-movie series, the Andy Sedaris collection. I think it's had a few different names on DVD releases from Mill Creek in the past. I had the box set that was like $9 that had the full screen editions of the movies that were, I guess, repackaged from the originals from the original company that published them. They included all the special features and everything. Well, what these are, if you don't know, it became quite popular for people to satirize and make fun of these movies on, like, That Guy with the Glasses, probably about 10 years ago or so. You had that. You had Spoonie and a bunch of other people talking about them, making videos. And what are they? They're the epitome of the B-movie, rated R B-movie, where you got people that are naked for no reason, explosions, cheesy effects, poor acting, not the greatest. Basically, if you think Trauma, but think less Trauma and more like, what if Michael Bay wanted to make a Trauma movie? That's probably the best description I can give. And, I had no idea that they were ever going to release these on Blu-ray, and then I got a press release from Mill Creek saying, hey, they're taking at least the first two in the series. I hope they do the rest, and doing, full 4K remasters. Now, they aren't 4K Blu-rays. They are just normal Blu-rays. I guess they probably want to test the waters first. But they're from a 4K master that they've done. They're released in widescreen in the original theatrical aspect ratios. They have all the special features, talking identical to what the Mill Creek DVD releases had, except that the trailers for these two movies are remastered in high def as well. The rest of them are all the standard def copies. But again, they're higher quality because they're on a Blu-ray release to begin with. Now, they've been done to death as far as explaining the storylines in Hard Ticket to Hawaii and Malibu Express, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you that as far as audio is concerned, they are stereo HD, DTS master audio releases. But that being said, for the most part, they're basically mono. These movies were almost mono-tracked, very little stereo separation, so there's no difference there. You're not really getting any audio improvement with these at all, but that's fine. That's for the type of movie it is. Visually, though, they're surprisingly higher quality, and I'm talking a lot higher quality. You see every bit of film grain. You see, every imperfection, every seam on things that are supposed to explode, squibs, everything, on the actual film, it's so clear you can see any mistakes they made, or even more clarity, which makes the films even better. Visually, color correction has been done very well. This feels the most cinematic and film-like these films have ever looked. It's surprisingly super duper high quality. This isn't going to ever look like, Citizen Kane remastered or, Lawrence of Arabia or anything. But this is probably the best these are going to look unless they actually release a 4K Blu-ray, using that new scan that they did of it. They both come with digital copies that you can redeem on Mill Creek's website to watch, online. I popped in the disc into my Blu-ray drive in my computer to watch, as well as popping it into my Xbox One X. I popped it in the computer because I wanted to see in Windows, are they using single layer discs or dual layer? They surprisingly use dual layer, so we're talking, the most data rate that you can apply to the actual disc to give it the best quality, because with films like this that have a lot of film grain, a lot of times that gets blurred out or has compression artifacts. So they made sure that they pumped in the highest amount of quality they could for these releases, and they're releasing it like $10 a piece. So, depending on the store, depending on the country region, and the artwork for the actual release is neat. It's the original posters, mocked into the Blu-ray form factor, and they just look fantastic. I love when they used to take, it's obviously they took photos of people or screenshots from the film, and then what they do is they have somebody hand draw portraits of them and put them on the cover. Or in the case of Malibu Express, you end up having, the guy, he's not that muscly in the movie, but he now has a magical humongoid steroid abs, which is fantastic. And the tagline for Malibu Express is packing heat from Texas to Malibu Beach. And then, the pay the price for paradise and Hard Ticket to Hawaii. And there's so many quotes that you could take from these movies and use them, in their everyday life. One cool thing about the special features of these is they include the trailers for all 12 movies that Andy Sidaris either directed or produced that were in this series. And they're like 21 or 22 minutes worth of trailers. And if you watch all the trailers, they themselves are almost like watching a half-hour TV special of just amazing ridiculousness. Dialogue that you can never get away with today. Nudity in the trailers, of all things. Things that could only happen in the late 80s and early 90s. So I'm very, very happy with these releases, and I really, really hope that Mill Creek puts out the rest of the series, because they'll stay in my collection forever. These are super fantastic. Of the two, Malibu Express is the most like a real, I'm going to say real in quotes, movie from the time, and then Hard Ticket to Hawaii is where it goes completely off the rails and becomes the crazy masterpiece that a series that it would become later on in the 90s. And I believe these might be the only two, or maybe some of the other ones in the late 80s and early 90s might have been filmed on 35 millimeter, but most of them, as you remember, were filmed probably on tape or something to that extent. So these look the best remastered. I predict that the quality increase will go down as each release comes out, because they use cheaper and cheaper materials. So if you're going to buy only one of these, go with Hard Ticket to Hawaii, because it's so hilarious and funny. But again, at like $10 a piece, 10, 15, pick up both of them. They're completely worth it. They're don't think that they were meant to be comedies initially, but they're definitely like an action comedy is the best way to describe them. So, that's Malibu Express and Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Mill Creek's outdone themselves. Go pick them up now. Got a quick one here for you. It's Neo Atlas 1469 from NIS America. Now, what is this title? It's sort of just swooped, I think, a little under the radar of most people. What it is you remember those titles that used to come out, and they probably still do, on like the NES, and that were you were sort of exploring the world. It was sort of set during the, I guess, Great Expansion, where like the 1500s, where people were sort of circumnavigating the world and discovering new lands, the New World, uncharted waters, that sort of stuff. It's got a bit of that. So basically, you're in charge of expeditions to map the planet, and hence Neo Atlas, and you send out people that then will sort of map the world, and sort of randomly generated the terrain that they find, and you can reject what they find, and it will then send somebody else out, and it will then map the world again in its different image. So it's interesting in that it's sort of like a sim, and then you're sort of conquering the land. It's got a bit of the I guess world sim sort of stuff like Civilization, blended into it, and it's sort of a weird hybrid that way. I'm pretty certain that no other game, at least that I've seen, has done anything like this before. And I received it on the Switch to try out, and it was pretty cool. I'm gonna say this game is not for everybody. It's a little slower moving than what most people are used to, but it's one of the games that I've been picking up and playing sort of in between my other games that I've got for review. And, I'm picking it up in bits and spurts and playing through it. And I'm having a pretty good time with it. And I can see myself playing it over and over again because of the aspect of it being completely randomly, generated as you go each time. So I would say check out a trailer for it on YouTube if you want to get an idea of, the visual style and everything. And it's actually pretty good. It plays good in portable mode as well as plugged into the TV, so it scales well. And it's one of those things where I haven't actually listened to it with the music on because I put on like podcasts, or I've put on like my playlists on Google Music or Spotify, and just sort of zoned out while playing the game. And it's been really fun that way. I've been really enjoying myself. So it's going to be something that this isn't for like a 6-year-old. They're probably not going to find it interesting. This is something if you like those exploration games, you like this, the old sim games that you used to play, you like Civilization, and you like sort of everything blended into one. So I would say check it out. That's Neo Atlas 1469 from NIS America.
Those magnificent bastards! Color me kooky, but something very odd is going on around here.
You're not allowed to talk anymore.
One Piece World Seeker, brought to you by Namco Bandai, is an interesting game in that a lot of the other games that they've released recently based on the popular anime titles have been those arena fighters, and that's sort of what I think a lot of people were expecting when this game was announced. Well, that's not really what it is. It's sort of almost like an open world action RPG with almost Spider-Man-like elements in that you can sort of grappling hook your arms onto rooftops and trees and things and jump across. So it's this really cool hybrid of a lot of newer game styles put into one. You go to town, you do missions, you explore the world, you beat up enemies. It controls very well. The graphics are quite good for a licensed title like this. As far as the audio is concerned, it's spot on. There's good dynamic 5.1 surround audio with it. I'm not honestly the most familiar with the series in that it's kind of daunting for somebody to jump in after like 900 episodes or something have aired. So I had to give myself a bit of a primer on the series. And it might be something I actually go and watch now and slowly work my way up to, modern times with it, because I was captivated by the world that the game created. I found it to be quite charming, easy to play, wasn't too difficult at all. It was sort of a breeze, actually, and very, very smooth controls, which have been my criticism of the recent Namco Bandai arena games that aren't Dragon Ball Fighters. It's just those games feel a little sloppy, or like they're pretty, but then they have control issues. This seemed to be a much better packaged game overall. Again, it's in a different style than those games, but it just seems to be a much better put together game, and I hope it sells quite well because it's really high up on my list of good games so far this year. I haven't looked at anybody else's reviews or critics and that. Sometimes I do to get sort of an idea of where I stand on it, and I didn't want to because this, regardless of what anybody else might think of it, I think it's really, really good, and it's definitely worth checking out. As far as replayability, that's yet to be seen how much I'll go back and replay it, but it is worth, I think, the full retail price because it was a really well realized game. So give it a try. If you're not completely sure, check out some videos on YouTube on gameplay and some trailers, but take my recommendation. I think it's worth picking up, and there's not really much more I can say about it. I think I'm hooked on One Piece now. So that's One Piece World Seeker from Namco Bandai. Our World Has Ended is the new visual novel game from P-Cube, and I've reviewed a bunch of their stuff before, and this one was actually the first thing I had looked at on their website when I was contacting them to see if we could get some games for review, and it was the one I was most looking forward to at the time because it was a full-on sci-fi epic. Basically the tagline is, what if you took the AR headset off, but the animation didn't go away? It's sort of a blending of a virtual reality world into the real world, and things that are happening in the AI world and the game world, I'm saying in quotes, which you can't see obviously, are affecting the real world and having catastrophic effects on it. There's stuff you've come to expect from a lot of these games, like fully virtually realized worlds of like districts of Tokyo. You've got all the different characters that you're interacting with, sort of trying to figure out how to sort of save everything. And because it's a visual novel game, I can't go much more into detail than that, except that the art is really inspired. It's well drawn. This isn't a hokey, cheaply put together game that you sometimes see on like Steam and that. This is a fully realized high production value game with a good story. It's voice acted, and the voice acting, well, I guess only in Japanese, is top shelf. You can tell when somebody is a good actor regardless of the language that's in. So that comes across really well. And surprisingly, there's only 40 hours of gameplay in this. Usually these games are really short, but you've got twists and turns left and right, and then it has a full 40-hour gameplay, which leaves a lot. You can take your time. That's why it took me a while. This game came out a few weeks back, and I had received a code a few weeks prior to that, but I took my time playing through it because I wanted to make sure I got fully immersed in the story. And it's pretty worth it. If you're a fan of visual novel games, this is going to be one of the ones to pick up for sure. If you're not, it's not going to be the one that I say again, like that'll pull you in. But if you like sci-fi stories and you're not a visual novel fan, or somebody who's been really immersed in that whole genre before, this might be a jumping on point if you're a big sci-fi fan. So it's one to check out. It's from P-Cube. I would say, it's available on multiple platforms, on the PS4 and on the Switch. I'd say pick it up on the Switch because it's one of those ones that it scales well. It's also really great. I ended up playing it, in bed. But I was basically playing, reading myself a story before I went to bed and played through the scenario. So that's going to be the one I would prefer to get, unless you're somebody who doesn't have a Switch, and then in that case, the PS4 version is fully playable and perfectly fine too. So, check out Our World Has Ended, and, maybe let me know what you think. Feedback at ThisWeekInGeek.net.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
Unit 4 from Gamera Games was originally released on PC and Xbox One in May of 2017, and has recently joined the Nintendo Switch Indie Library. Unit 4 is a platformer with all the usual trappings of the genre, but what makes this one stand out is the ability to swap between 4 different characters on the fly, which you will need to do often to solve the challenges that you'll encounter along the way, and those challenges are most definitely going to test your mettle. The setting is a little tongue-in-cheek, as the opening of the game sets the scene in a Star Wars open and crawl, complete with a scrolling yellow text and a slow pan down to the start of the action. Our hero's home planet has been invaded by evil aliens and stolen their sacred artifact. Evidently, this is not the first world these aliens have done this to, so our 4 heroes decide to take the fight to the enemy and deal with this interplanetary threat once and for all. Gameplay is what you'd expect from a 2D platformer game, with precision jumping, enemies to pounce on, and some obstacles to overcome. Each of your 4 heroes has a unique ability, such as dashing with super strength or a grappling hook, though you'll need to use all of these to get past the many challenges this game presents. It will take timing, practice, and muscle memory to get over some of these challenges, as Unit 4 does not expect you to breeze through its levels. Checkpoints are thankfully generous enough to prevent the game from becoming too frustrating, but your patience will be tried as you fling yourself against the same part of a level over and over until you get it right. This type of challenge can be divisive, as memorization is the only way to realistically defeat some portions of the game, and some players may find that more frustrating than satisfying. Memorizing boss patterns seems to be the only way to defeat some enemies, which is reminiscent of some boss fights from the Dark Souls series of games, though even in those famously difficult games, most bosses can potentially be defeated through sheer skill on the first try. Unit 4 is easy to look at. It has lots of bright colors, and you can usually tell what's going on with ease, with some exceptions, such as ice spikes sitting on top of an icy background. It's a typical pixel art appearance, but 2D platformers only have so much room for visual innovation, and as long as I can tell what's going on screen, I'm satisfied with what I see. The controls are finicky, needing absolute precision for them to work the way you want them to, so be warned that things like lazy aiming or fat fingering will often lead to death. My controller dexterity isn't what it used to be, so I died a lot due to pressing the wrong button or aiming my grappling hook just a little off to the side. This can be frustrating, and I would have liked to see this a little more forgiving. Unit 4 has a local co-op mode, which I've heard can drastically change the gameplay experience, but I was not able to test this mode as I have no friends. If you get this game, try it with a friend and see what antics you can get into. Unit 4 is a hard game, and I feel you'll have to be the type of gamer that likes to mash their face against the same challenge over and over in order to enjoy this game. It can feel unfair at times, with boss battles moving a bit too quick to react to, and only through memorizing patterns being able to complete the level. That's not everyone's cup of tea, so buyer beware. There's hard but fair, and then there's old school platformer hard. This is one of the latter. That said, Unit 4 is still a well-made game, and I enjoyed my experience mashing my face against it. I certainly recommend Unit 4 for masochistic and nostalgic gamers alike. Until the next review, I'm Mr. Tristifer for ThisWeekInGeek.net.
I've got a new game here from NIS America, and that is The Princess Guide. Now, what is The Princess Guide? They've had a bunch of games with Princess in the title come out recently, and it can be confusing for some people. This particular game is part strategy RPG, part, I guess, raising sim is sort of what it's called, I guess, in the genre. So I'll give you, a bit of a lowdown. Here's the basic synopsis of the game. In a land torn by chaos and war, a new evil arises. Now, 4 princesses from 4 different kingdoms must learn how to lead their people to victory, and you basically can, how are they going to survive, and how are they going to, make their lands prosperous. You start a princess knight training regimen, and basically you're in control of, their growth and how they perform. And it's very unique in that each of the knights has a unique story to tell. They play a little different, and while you're in the battlefield, you can scold them or praise them, and that sort of trains them, and their AI learns a little better so they can do better or worse at certain aspects of the battlefield. It's actually pretty cool. It's got a unique art style. It's sort of cute. It's the standard sort of thing you start to see now coming out a lot from NIS America and other RPG companies where this isn't going to be your AAA title with your Final Fantasy graphics. This is going to be your cutesy anime sort of game. But with, in this case, unique gameplay aspects, specifically in how it's the strategy meets sim sort of thing. It's really hard to explain without playing it. You're going to have to sort of play it yourself. I do recommend it. It's not going to be for everybody. This is going to be a game that, hardcore, NISA fans and RPG fans are going to like. It's not going to be something that this isn't like, baby's first RPG. This isn't something you're going to just randomly come into and be like, oh, this is super easy and I'm going to get into it. It does have a decent difficulty curve. It's something, again, I recommend to fans of the genre and or somebody just wants to try something a little different out there. You have your basic strategy games, you have your RPGs, you have your Sims. This sort of has that mixture of all of them, and it's pretty cool. So, it's out now, so you're going to want to check it out. That's The Princess Guide from NIS America.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
Zanki Zero Last Beginning is a game in a style that I'm not normally very good with or have an affinity for, and that's the first-person perspective dungeon crawler. But it's done very differently because it's sort of post-apocalyptic, and you're out in the open. It's very colorful. The controls are pretty cool. It's just overall, it's a very different thing. That I think what I should correct myself with is I think I've mostly only played dungeon crawly first-person perspective games that are American or Western style. So maybe, this opens up a whole new avenue for games that I can play, in that I wasn't bored. I've always found that style of game to be just blah, and this was anything but blah, if that makes any sense. Spike Chunsoft has given me a review copy to try out on, at my home and at my leisure on PS4, and I found that it's a pretty good experience. It came out on Vita in Japan, which they're not going to do here. I think it would have played a little better portable in my mind than it does, but that's not to say it's not a fun game. I had a pretty good experience with it. The music is actually really good. The visuals are great. There's been some changes for the localization. They took out some stuff that might have been seen as, I guess, a little inappropriate here, panty shots, that sort of stuff. Stuff that, fanfare, that doesn't really affect it in my mind, removing it. It would have been nice if they had an option to leave it in or unlock it if you chose to, or switch it on and off. But, it's obviously to secure a different rating or sort of different tastes in different regions, that sort of stuff. And again, it's not something I'm like, oh God, I need to have that in my game. No, that doesn't matter to me. Now, as far as they didn't change the core gameplay, except they did add an easier mode. So, I like to play things on easy usually for a first playthrough, and then I put it up to a harder mode later on. So the international release that we have here has an easier difficulty for if you want to just get more into the story, not worry as much about combat, because a lot of these dungeon crawly sort of first-person games are very difficult. So they've lowered the difficulty on it and let you sort of experience the puzzle aspects, solving the mystery and puzzles, as well as continuing with the story, which is what I prefer to do anyway. I'm more of a story game player. If I want to play something more hardcore, I don't usually do that as often, or I'll play it with friends. For something like this, I think that's perfect, having an easier mode to play through with. And it's something that, I might not play it over and over and over and over and over again. This isn't going to be a game where I play it a million times. It is something that I thought was definitely worth playing. So to that end, it is something I think you should check out. If you get it physical, you're going to get a bunch of cool little things. If you get like the Day 1 edition, or get some, little trinkety stuff with it that a lot of these companies put out now. It's pretty cool. I got it digital, and I'm perfectly happy with that. So good, I'll make a summary here for you. It's got pretty good visuals. It's in a style of gameplay that I don't normally like, but I liked this. So that tells you something. So either if you're a huge hardcore fan, maybe you're not going to like this version, or maybe this is just one of the much better ones out there that everybody's going to like. So either I'm crazy or whatever. Actually, I'm crazy. I am crazy, and I'm rambling. But you know what? I had a pretty good time with this game. Spike Chunsoft did a good job of the localization, and kudos to them. They've been coming out sort of with a lot of releases in the past. They put out the Fire Pro Wrestling, which was polarizing in our reviews. I loved it. Michael didn't care for it, but Michael's more of a simulator game guy, and I'm more of an arcade sort of wrestling guy. So they're putting out all these cool titles, and I really, really hope that they continue to do that with newer ones coming out in the future. They're very diverse. This is a game I didn't think I was going to like, and I ended up liking it. So I'm always happy when something like that surprises me. So I would say check it out. It's pretty much, as far as consoles go, it's exclusive to the PS4 in North America. So either check it out digitally or pick it up on Amazon or a local store, like go to your GameStop or your local mom and pop if you have one around you. And if you're a fan of RPGs, you're probably going to like it, especially if you're a fan of the first-person perspective games. And if you're a fan of puzzly stuff and not so high on the combat aspect, there is an easier difficulty. So go ahead and do what Alex did and turn it down to baby mode. So, Zanki Zero, Last Beginning, brought to us from Spike Chunsoft, and check it out now. Armored Trooper Votoms, the TV collection, is the brand new standard definition on Blu-ray release from Maiden Japan of the classic mecha anime. It's pretty much universally hailed as one of the best of all time. I had never seen this before because it had not really had major releases in the past here in the West, and this is a great way to get all of it. 52 episodes plus 6 movies. Now the movies are compilation films. like they used to do back in the 90s, where you'd condense the plot of an entire show down to a bunch of easily released VHS movies. So it's kind of cool that it includes both in here. So I did the deep dive and watched all 52 episodes and was, pleasantly surprised at how good it is and how well it holds up, especially in standard definition. Now, it is standard definition Blu-ray, so you're getting progressive scan, much higher data rates than you'd ever get on a DVD. The audio is Japanese, stereo, DTS master audio, stuff that you've come to expect now from Made in Japan. But the subtitles are quite good, easy to follow. It looks like it's newly translated, so that's perfect. It's not for everybody in that it's, in Canada it's 14A, so it's rated TV mature in the States, because there's some heavy-duty themes in here. I don't need to really go into the history of it, because if you're a super anime fan, you know the show. You just want to know, is it worth picking up? And I'd say yes, because I went and watched the 52 episodes, and then went and watched the compilation movies. And the compilation movies are a good, representation as well. Sometimes those compilations can be poorly produced or just jumbled together. But to be honest, if you've got a friend that may not want to sit down and watch, all 52 episodes, you can watch the 6 movies that are on the third disc. Make it like a weekend thing where you watch a couple one weekend, a couple another weekend, and so on and so forth. And they might then think it's really cool and want to see all the insides and outs and watch all the extra episodes, because there's not really a lot of filler or anything on here. It's just that they condense the main plot points down into the 6 movies. So they've also got a OVA collection coming out later on this year that I'm hoping that we're going to get our hands on to review as well. So I'm really, really excited for all these mecha animes that hadn't had releases here or hadn't had them in a very long time, getting the standard def Blu-ray release, because you're probably not going to get HD masters of these, or if you did, you're going to end up spending like $150 or something on the sets. So, these sets are, they changed retailer to retailer, but you're looking at about $50-$60 or so Canadian, which is pretty good considering you get everything. The episodes are spread across the first 2 discs, and then the movies are on the third disc. So it's a pretty good value. Check it out on Amazon, or, Right Stuff, or any of the anime stores that you normally would go to. So that's for Armored Troopers Votoms TV collection. Okie dokie, that is going to be it for this sort of rapid-fire review edition of TurdOrTreasure, and I'm trying to think of, what's coming up next. I know the topic we wanted to talk about on the prototype. We've bounced around a couple, so it's going to be one of a couple topics that we talk about. One of them was sort of the big debacles that have been going on with these giant corporations, basically like what BioWare has been doing wrong, and by extension Activision and EA and Bethesda and all these giant companies, and have they gotten too big, that sort of thing. And then there were a couple other topics we were going to talk about. I'm not exactly sure which one we do. It depends on if we have Mr. Tristifer on board to talk, or if it's going to be me and Birdman, or if we end up recording it at all this weekend. That's the hope, though. It just all depends on what mood everybody's in, and basically can we, settle down for about an hour to talk about this sort of thing. Regardless, this weekend we are going to be recording some commentaries. It'll be the first new ones of the new year. We've gone back and noticed that commentaries are some of our more listened to things, some of the things that we've had most interactions with fans on, and some stuff that we've had that we found pretty fun, especially the ones that where we found like old abandoned tapes on YouTube, ones where you can't buy them anymore. The copyright holder's either gone or non-existent, so they're not taken down off YouTube, and we can watch them, like the Hulk Hogan ones we did, a couple of action ones like the Billy Blanks one, and we're going to try to see if we can do a horror one and maybe another one. We're going to start probably trying to do that more on a regular basis now that the weather's getting better and we can get together a little better. And it would be cool to get back to doing that. I know I've been waiting on a package from Vinegar Syndrome and Film Chest for a little while now, and there had been sort of a little back and forth on what we were going to get in the package. So soon, I'm saying, knock on wood, I should be getting a package again, and we might bring back the Twig After Dark again, probably just me solo, maybe me and Birdman, where we go through and sort of live commentary review every bit of the porn except the porn, which is actually it's a lot of work for us, but it's immensely fun to skip through all the porn and basically jump through and just watch all the acting and see if there's a cohesive story, because there's some pretty funny things out there, especially if they're let's say like sci-fi theme, like Sex World was. That was kind of funny. So we're going to try to do maybe that. Again, we've got some stuff planned for the spring and summertime, but we're already getting close to E3, so who knows what's going to come soon. Things are going real fast here. So we're going to have some commentaries coming up, probably horror film commentaries. We're going to have more with TWIG. We want to do a little more with Future Imperfect, which is the show that Birdman and I sometimes appear on with Steve Megatron Phillips of the Geekcast Radio Network, because we want to talk about where the Star Trek Discovery and I guess you can sort of include some of the stuff from the Orville in there. Well, where the seasons have gone, or this past season or so on both of those shows. And, we just got to wait for Birdman to catch up. He's starting to. I'm completely caught up and ready and rev to go. So it's just, we're sort of waiting on you, buddy. And on top of that, we've got a few other projects that we want in sort of pre-production. Can't speak more about them just yet, but the idea is between, the main show, TurdOrTreasure, commentaries, prototype, and then also the syndicated shows we have with, like Mayhem Mike's, Future Imperfect, and then a fairly regular weekly show that Birdman is on with Nerd of the Third Power. We're trying to fill it up so we have a lot more content that is constantly flowing on the site. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything keeps going smoothly, and we'll have plenty more content to come to you and plenty more fun things. We want to always try something new, try something more fun. If it all works out, it'd be nice to bring back something like Birdman's Forgotten Saturday Mornings, but that's something we're going to have to work out logistically and see if we can actually do that, and maybe stream some, public domain or forgotten cartoons, that sort of thing. And something to look forward to, I think, in the next couple months or so. So until then, I'm going to say goodbye and, make a warm tea, because my throat is sore. I'm from talking and from coughing, and man, I hate winter. I hate being sick. I'll see you guys soon, and we'll be back on This Week in Geek on the weekend.
Well, that's our show.
All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at thisweekingeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at thisweekingeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
Not the kind of person to say a toe-to-so, but you know what? A toe-to-so. A fucking a toe-to-so.
I can't believe it.
That Gerald is presenting the quarterly budget report with finger puppets?
Look, here comes a 1.7% decrease in fixed overhead. Hello, everybody.
No, I can't believe how easy it was to save hundreds of dollars on my car insurance with Geico.
Who are you? The projected increase in organic Q3 revenue. Hooray!
Believe it, Geico could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Geico presents Yikes! Another voicemail from your roommate.
Sup, roomie? Hey, a pipe burst in the basement. It's completely flooded. Anyway, I called for someone to fix it, but in the meantime, I was thinking we could finally have that indoor pool party we've always wanted. I got some cool swan floaty things already going. Could you pick up some chips on your way home? Later.
The Geico Insurance Agency could help keep your personal property protected, like if your roommate isn't the brightest pool float in the flooded basement. Visit geico.com to see how easy it is to switch and save on renter's insurance.